And we're live. What's been
Yeah,
up?
yeah. So I was watch. I just ran across a couple of your mastermind videos, man.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What do you sound like yeah, you and your homeboy there. You sound like me and my homeboy when we were younger, except there's a better organization because what I do now is I do. I mean, I'm doing what you guys are doing basically. You guys are doing like a corporate earnings call? Are you reporting to the shareholders? You reporting to the board of directors, and you get into this habit of doing it from the very beginning, and it just stays with you for the whole time. So it's just a lifestyle habit to just report on on what you guys are doing. It's like so as the organization grows, it just is part of life. It's no longer this thing you got to do for these shareholders.
Yeah, I would like to look at it as we hold each other accountable. And the thing with me, I don't know if it's in my genetics or just my upbringing, but I'm just very competitive. And so, like, if it's me and someone that are going back and forth, and it doesn't have to be within the same space, I just I don't know. I just feel like I have to show that I'm further ahead than I was last week, or I'm making more progress, or whatever. So I won't say that it's competition between him and I, but I mean I thrive off of competition. You could call it an insecurity, but it's essentially us holding each other accountable and making sure that every session that we have that's scheduled routinely on Fridays at 7:30, that we report progress. Else, it's kind of, I don't know, disappointing if not embarrassing to have a session. I'm like, yo, so what did you did? What did you do? And if they weren't sick or they had a family emergency, it's kind of putting pressure on both of us.
Yeah, yeah. You guys have an advantage is because both for myself and my homeboy, we're much older than you guys, and we have kids. I have three, so the only you guys have no impediments like that where you can't say anything like, well, the mother of my child has destroyed this child's life, you know,
Well, he has
and
a family. I don't.
okay, well.
Yeah, he's married with kids. So
Oh well, well, marriage is one thing. That's cool. That's cool. All right. Yeah, yeah. It's and then yeah. On one of them, you mentioned the three words I thought I would never hear on YouTube ever. STD. I have not heard that since the 80s, man. What is?
oh yeah, someone corrected. I was in Toronto a couple weeks ago, and someone corrected me. They're like, it's we now say STI. I'm like, STI, what's that? And they're like, infection. I'm like, what's the difference? You still contract it for somebody.
Ah, yeah. See that was a big problem for me in college because the girl would get you know she get all wet up and then she go to class. She wouldn't, she go straight to class. She wouldn't do any hygienic activities. She just go straight to class, and then you come back after class. That's how you get this thing I learned called chlamydia. Uh, because of the bacteria that might build up every 20 minutes while she's in class. She might go to another class after that, and then finally come back. And you're like 20 something years old, and you don't care about any of that, and bam.
Wow, I never researched any of that stuff really. I know it's a lot, but yeah, I never really researched it. half the things that I say, like I'm not really conscious of it that much. I guess I should work on my filter more. I mean, obviously, I was joking around, but I forget that there might be some corporate, like, I don't know, decision makers that may be like looking at it and like, we don't know if we want to put them in front of a client.
Yeah, the guy who is far beyond, way far beyond where you are, and you should not ever want to compete with this guy. Is he calls himself Barnacles Nerdgasm, and he used to be an employee of Microsoft, and he has he blew up on YouTube, a few million followers. Uh, and yeah, he had a friend, or he still has a friend called Jay's Two Cents, and then Jay's Two Cents and Barnacles mess around with this dude named from Canada. Uh, uh, I can't remember these people now, but there's a Canadian dude who's really, really doing well in this um, computer hardware YouTube personality space. But this Barnacles Nerdgasm, he shares way too much information. Yeah, I'm just letting you know he goes way, way over the
Where
top.
he goes into his actual family
Yeah,
issues and stuff like
yeah,
that.
yeah. He goes way over the top. I mean, when he does. See, I like listening to him because he reminds me of. He's actually the embodiment of the coworker that I've worked with most of my career, who essentially hates himself, um, and he doesn't understand why you don't hate yourself either, especially in the context of racism. Um, and you're the team that I work with now, they're mostly your age or younger, so they haven't lived long enough to hate themselves. Unless something unusual happened to one of them, which is very rare. But that's really out of all the things I've come on your channel to talk about, the core of it is working with other employees that hate themselves. That's really that's really it's like they want a companion to go with them on this self deprecation trip, and then you come in there saying, which you have said many times on your channel, you come in there trying to rehabilitate the entire company, and they're like, "Come on, man, what are you doing, man? Just
Oh, all right, I promise not to get too racial. When a white person does it, they're an agent of change. When a black person does it, they're a problem. you know. So I usually call myself the Samuel Jackson of software shops, um, and it's just because things that I know I would be held accountable for that the good old boys would never let me get away with. And maybe it's a curse because I worked at Rockwell Automation in Cleveland, Ohio. And I mean, it was a regulated industry dealing with like power systems. And so like they were just very rigorous when it came to building quality software. And when I go to these other shops and they're just slanging code everywhere, no tests, and they use all these fancy words that stakeholders don't understand when they're asked, what's the state of, the project or why is this taking so long? I just get frustrated. And there's been times where I just call a spade. And I'm like, why are you claim to spend like 3 weeks writing an IOC container that no one knows what it is, but people that actually build software. And I did it in like, I wrote it because it's just a dictionary and I did it in like 3 minutes, but it's taking you 3 weeks. So why don't you explain to the rest of the crowd what you've really been working on and how you've been consuming the company's or the client's budget? But again, they won't focus on like the the concepts or the information that I want people to focus on. They'll just focus on I'm a difficult person to work with. So I know I'm getting kind of like off tangent, but
oh no, no, no. If
it's
you
just frustrating that people can get away with so much because they're polite and they're friendly, but they're incompetent, and that just seems to go much. It, I see that combination so much in our industry, and I get reprimanded almost every single time that I call someone out for it
Yeah.
because
Because the thing
I'm
is,
going against the union. You know,
in many cases, the manager or organization leader you're talking to is held hostage by these people. And the classic example I like to bring up, I might have brought it up earlier on your channel, is me not as a developer. I don't need to be physically there. I don't need to. Uh, yeah, I don't need to physically be there. But a lot of the other people that the manager is managing has to physically be there. But these people are also socially connected to the manager. I'm usually have been the new guy or the contractor, so by definition, the outsider. Then sprinkle racism on top of that, it makes it worse. So when you, so the idea is, the this guy who has to be there. So if I go in there saying I need to work at home, he doesn't want to let me work at home, which pisses me off. He doesn't want to let me work at home because he has to tell his guy who sets up the computers that he can't work at home. So I get to work at home, but his buddy that he's known for years can't. He doesn't want to put himself in that position. So he rather just not talk about it. And the other thing is just building up technical debt. And they don't want to face the work it would take to undo all of that technical debt. So the definition of work becomes suffering with this inefficient process in order to maintain the debt, and and they hate themselves on top of that. So it's you know it's a it feeds on itself, and these are poorly run organizations. But the thing I wanted to say though is uh, what has been made popular in the social media space is women in tech. And most of the problems women have had in tech are almost identical to the problems that we have had as Black men in tech, except for one part that they don't want to talk about. But most of it overlaps. Most of it overlaps. The idea that this woman has to tell me how wrong I'm doing everything is, it's almost identical to what we would have to go through doing the same thing. And the so there is, because of that, there's two major things that have helped this cultural fit situation or racial situation, because this issue comes under the guise of cultural fit. So we can talk about race explicitly, but what the rest of the world would want to talk about is cultural fit. Okay. So, you can't work for Hitler because there's a cultural fit problem. Okay.
mm,
Uh, so the the uh, the cultural fit issue is the thing, and now I've lost my line of thinking. I've lost my trail. But
well, to me, like the cultural fit at these shops, based on my personal experience, isn't what's conveyed on the mission statement, right? On the mission statement, they all say continuous improvement, uh, collaboration. We embrace diversity, which I believe is we embrace diverse backgrounds and perspectives. But when they when they say no, thank you, because this person isn't a cultural fit, they're basically saying has nothing to do with your technical ability. We know that there are certain things that you stand for that our existing organization may have a hard time coming to terms with. So it's kind of weird. Like I match their mission statement, but I'm not a cultural fit, right? And so it's just a oxymoron, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, and also, yeah. Oh, that's right. So, yeah, what you have is a situation of corruption. You just defined corruption. That's a corrupt system. The most typical corrupt system is a company that claims to be agile and they're not. That's call it what it is. It's not fake agile. It is a symptom of corruption in the organization.
I want to remove agile from as a term within this industry. We could replace the word agile with high performing organization, and then let's see if they still will fix their lips to say that. And well, ninety
Okay,
percent of them, ninety
yeah,
percent of them won't because they can't. You you notice a difference. Like you'll go to a conference. Oh, we're agile, but blah blah blah, whatever. Um, but it's so overused that that means absolutely nothing. So like, let's just get rid of that term and say, are you a high performing organization? And if you're a high performing organization, what examples can you provide? And the majority of people can't do it. Like you said, they're held hostage by their developers that are resistant to change, meaning that they're resistant to really exercising continuous improvement. So I don't know. We're discussing a condition that I think is really futile. Like there's nothing you can do as long as there's no barriers to entry, as long as there's no regulation. Then it, it's not going to fix itself. You'll just have people that see the issue um, and get frustrated because they're forced to work within that type of environment. And other people, they just collect a check and it's not that serious to them. It's whatever. You know, they'll keep on doing whatever they're doing until more airplanes crash or
yeah,
more people die from malfunctioning pacemakers, and that's what it's going to take. So
yeah,
at
and
least
that's
at least with those sectors, aerospace, healthcare, etc., they are regulated, so they have tighter quality controls. But it's just not you're still recruiting people that don't come from those spaces that bring their habits and their lack of rigor with them. So yeah,
yeah. It's a what I've learned recently with I had to transition out of the last place I was working for 3 years to a new company and a new industry.
in
Uh,
Newport,
hmm?
in Newport, California,
No, this is El Segundo.
Newport Beach, right?
No, no, Newport Beach was before El Segundo. I did 3 years in El Segundo,
Oh, okay.
and this is a It was a finance company that was just perfectly corrupt. It was a victim of merger and corruption.
Internology is in El Segundo, I thought.
No, that's San Diego.
Oh, okay. All right, I'm listening.
And El Segundo is most famously mentioned by Red Fox on Sanford and Son.
Oh, that's the '80s.
El Segundo. No, that's the 70s. That's El Segundo. It is
Sanford and
the
Son is
home of
'70s.
Chevron. Yeah, yeah, yes, yeah. No, that's 70s. Yeah, yeah. Sanford and Son was the 70s. Yeah.
Okay.
uh, yeah, the guy that plays Rollo on Sanford and Son lives next door to my daughter. In
Oh shoot, you're right. 1972 was the
Yeah,
first episode.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But
It's in 1977.
yeah, so I moved over to this new industry called e-discovery. So I thought I would come on your channel just to, uh, in case there are historians of the future going through this data. I have come on your channel to talk about a what I think is the first decent corporate citizen I've ever worked for in my entire career, which is almost over from definitely from your point of view. My career is almost over, yet I found one decent corporate citizen. But that her company versus a woman, that she runs her company in this space called e-discovery. And I thought e-discovery was this cute, stupid term, but it's actually a legal term. When two companies become involved in a legal entanglement in litigation, there is a discovery phase of all of their documentation. And because most documentation now is electronic, you have to do this using software. You know, the most famous software is this thing called relativity. Relativity. So this is the industry that I've just stepped into for the first time. But the company, because the reason I keep bringing up good corporate citizen is that there is a tendency, there is a correlation, very possibly, that a good corporate citizen would have a lack of corruption or a very minimized level of corruption in their IT organization. And this appears to be the case. I've been in this company for 5 months, and what they said they do in the interview is actually what they do every day. So
Yeah.
I'm just putting that on the historical record that I am able to recognize that these things exist and Nazis aren't everywhere. But they're everywhere. But in this one particular case, the level of corruption is not there. And speaking of
Oh,
Nazis,
how long have you been there for?
oh, 5 months, 5 months.
Okay.
But speaking of Nazis, it's important to mention. I'm not just throwing around the word Nazis, in an irresponsible, flippant manner. What Hitler used to do is deliberately and inefficiently make two people compete for the same thing. Two people where one person is actually needed to do the job, he would have two people compete for the job. And that is the essence of fascism.
No, that's what the Department of Defense does. That's what a lot of agencies do.
Yeah, yeah. It's the essence of
Or
a
should I say
fascist.
DARPA?
Yeah, because Hitler believed in fascism. Hitler was like, take it.
I don't know what fascism means, but I mean, to me, that's logical.
No,
You,
no. Fascism is about taking things instead of asking for them. It's about ritualizing theft and placing theft in the context of competition, and then wrapping that up with passion. So the fasces is a Roman symbol of conquest. It's like I'm gonna. Basically a bunch of sticks wrapped up in rope, and the sticks are wrapping up these axes. Okay, so it's basically I'm gonna cut your shit down. I'm gonna cut down your shit. I'm gonna take your shit and cut and wrap it up in a bundle and set it on fire. That's fascism. It's an ass whooping. It's a ritualized ass whooping. So if you wanted to go back and look at ancient Rome was about, if you look at the harbor of ancient Rome, you would see ships coming in laden with gold, women, most of them looking like Beyonce, coming into Rome. Okay. And then what's coming out of Rome is just cans of whoop ass. Soldiers,
I would
soldiers.
say Spain would be included, but yeah, but
Yeah,
they
so
did the whole conquest of South America. But yeah,
yeah, it's they're borrowing from the same Roman tradition. So when you go look at the monuments in Washington D.C., that architecture is it's a Roman style architecture. It's not actually Roman, but it's a Roman style. It's what they thought the Romans had. They didn't have that much information in George Washington's time, you know. But when they built all of that stuff, they built it off of this fantasy of what Rome was. But Rome is gangster. This is why gangster rap got more popular than Chuck D and Boogie Down Productions and all that stuff, because they were Romans. So when a brother said on a hip hop track, I hang with my dogs, man. F a gorilla, right? He's telling you I'm down with this Roman stuff right there. Because dogs, if you Google Romulus and Remus, you should see a sculpture of two baby boys sucking the breasts of a wolf. And what I said sounds crazy, but you will see a sculpture of two baby boys. It's Romulus and Remus. Okay, that is the essence of Rome, the wolf pack, men turning themselves into wolves. Okay,
Hmm.
all of this poetry and aesthetic is still what drives most male dominant organizations in the corporate world to this day. Is this imagery of wolves, of predators, of secrecy among competitive among these competitors. So to actually have a decent corporate citizen is very rare. Many of them may have pictures of themselves at some school, um, and there's a smiling child of color in the photo. And that corporation is now a good corporate citizen because they have that photo, right? But what are they actually doing? Flint, Michigan has been out of water for years. So where's the good corporate citizen? Where's Apple with $1 billion to come in and fix this problem? Okay, um, so this little company, which is based in Koreatown, that I've been working for, is pretty much the best company I've ever worked for. And it sounds like good news that I'm trying to tell you, but it's actually not. I mean, I've been doing this for almost 30 years. Okay, so I have not run across any company that is remotely like that. Now, I've been stuck in California for most of my career because of my children, but I've not run across any corporation that has this fidelity, this much fidelity on this level. Maybe Amgen, but I was not allowed too far into Amgen. I was a contractor there, so
So you're about to be a full time employee of this company then?
yeah.
Because
Oh
you've
yeah.
been working as a contractor, right?
No, yeah. I spent most of my career working as a contractor, which, from a finance point of view, is a disaster. I do not recommend doing that because the only way you can save in this particular economic climate is through the 401k. And the 401k is usually offered only through permanent employment. Now you can set up your own 401k. They call those solo 401ks. And you're still probably young enough to take advantage of that. If you do that, you might have a chance to put some pre-tax money aside.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I've learned. I'm just letting you know, man. I'm letting you know, young blood.
Yeah.
401k.
I don't know. I've never really understood why people would default to a 401k. Like I understand it's pre-tax, but then like I mean you have to like survive like the next 30 years in order to tap into it.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
our
It
family's
is.
history is we don't live
Yeah,
that long. So
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. That's where I learned from a financial. There's a financial reason why you have to be a boring person, and this is the classic middle class. Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is the classic middle class a trap. Really, it's a trap. You have to be a boring and predictable person in order to prevent un or minimize unforeseen financial disasters. But you can be as boring as you want to be, but if you happen to buy a house in the middle of a floodplain, then your life is going to be very exciting in this world of climate change. So people who think that they're leading boring lives are actually leading quite dangerous lives the next time it starts to rain in this world of climate change.
well, I mean like if you're married with kids, then like if I were married with kids, then my life would be quote unquote boring. I wouldn't I probably wouldn't do a, a lot of things that I probably do right now if I was tied down or if I had people that depended on me for shelter and for food. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I'll ride a motor.
there's a lot of financial events that can occur during marriage that are
Oh
also
yeah,
not boring, especially related to kids. And the number one thing that I vastly underestimated because it was not shared with me when I was a kid, and it probably was not shared with you, is that the probability of the person that you marry, you as the man, the
breadwinner
probability
usually.
that the person that you marry might have a psychological breakdown in the marriage is very high, and that could be expensive.
You know, I subscribe to MGTOW, right?
Mm, mm,
You know what MGTOW is?
mm.
And going their own way. So, well, it's this is so touchy. I'm sure I'm going to be like, there's going to be consequences to me discussing this. All right, so MGTOW preaches, aka advises, the following: Western society has groomed women to be entitled and to have more power just off of their words than men. So what was meant to be an equal playing field, you think about, past people in history, such as like Susan B. Anthony, and I'm sure there's a lot of activists that have fought for equal rights for women in Western society. I would argue that not only did they receive equality, which is a good thing, it actually tipped the scale. And so, to what you were talking about in regards to someone's mental health, when you marry somebody, like they're still a human being, just like you're a human being. They can still have emotional baggage from the past, just like you can have emotional baggage from the past. And people don't necessarily grow together throughout their relationship. Just like companies that partner with each other and they may not grow together, sometimes people grow apart. They part ways. Some people don't grow at all. They actually like devolve. And so here's the thing with MGTOW, men going their own way, is they preach, right? I'm just going to give it to us straight. They preach that you should think twice about getting into a regulated relationship with a woman. Regulated as in like getting married. Because when you do that, you now involve the police, the judge, and people with guns. So that if that relationship were to deteriorate or fall apart, well, the courts, the family courts, are going to be biased and they're going to more than likely take your house and your children and give the woman more control over it. And all it takes is for someone to be unhappy. That's on either side, right? And like, divorce rate, I think it's more than 50%. And I've heard a great example of Bryan, if I handed you a parachute when we're 5,000 feet up in the air and we're getting ready to go skydiving, I say, Bryan, it's cool, just have faith. This chute has 50% chance of deploying, but just stay positive, right? Would you really jump out that plane? No,
No,
you
no,
would.
no, no. See, the thing, there's things I didn't grow up with sisters, so there's a lot of young men who are like 12 years old who understand what it took me forever to understand about what is going on. So I agree with everything you said, except I frame it under two different things. One is black radical talk, So when you say the courts, I think, well, that's just the white man. Is if she's politically willing to turn you over to the white man, uh, then you have a political ideological difference, and this is something that is not respected in American culture because no one in modern American culture has an ideology. They just have reality. Period. And when you're not a part of this reality, you're just crazy.
You
But
can
the other thing that's important is what I frame as the difference between indigenous womanhood, womanhood based on indigenous wisdom, and Elizabethan womanhood. And most modern women are victims of patriarchy, and this leads to this Queen Elizabeth model. When Queen Elizabeth was a child, people wanted to kill her. So that would make most women a quote unquote bitch up front, okay? Before they even get started in life. There are people who want to kill her, okay? Marriage for her meant giving up her power and being lost in the Catholic Church, which is a fate worse than hell when you really get down to study the Catholic Church, okay? So this model is infusing the behaviors of modern women to this day, okay? And many of them are unable oh, at the same time, another basic thing that I fail to understand is that patriarchy benefits a minority of women, which never occurred to me. It's almost like saying racism benefits a small minority of African dictators because it does. Okay, there's a family in Haiti who is very happy with what has happened to Haiti since they got their independence from the French because they have lived off of the blood, sweat, and tears of their own people for generations, and they've been made wealthy in the Western context because of it. So Meghan Markle, for example, is the poster girl of the benefits of patriarchy, and every other woman on earth thinks they can be her, and that shit is not going to happen. It's almost like a whole bunch of brothers expected to be the next basketball player, the next,
yeah.
next, the next, LeBron James, and the probability of that happening is incredibly low. So, and then stacked on top of that, in the same manner that a young man could become a patriot and join the army because they believe in some American principles given to them in the '80s movie starring Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sly. A woman can come out of her family saying, "I'm going to have these grandbabies because I'm on a mission. I don't even care about the dude I'm marrying. I don't even know anything about him. I don't know anything about myself, but I'm on a mission to carry out these orders or these implied instructions that have been given to me in my household. I got to have these babies now. I got to have these babies. I'm doing this for some elder in my family. It's usually their mother that they're doing this for. They don't know anything about themselves at all. They're just on autopilot doing these things. And then once they do them, they're like 32, 33 years old, and they did all this shit, and they start to have a mental breakdown because they have nothing to live for after this. They did what they were told to do all their lives, and then they're left with themselves, and you married to them. Okay. So you see that it's not so much that you have this scheming, planning woman with this plan and shit. I mean, I'm sure Kim Kardashian had that shit, but there are very few women who have a clear plan about what they're doing. They just end up in that situation.
No, no, no. See, here, this is what MGTOW preaches, right? It's it's what they're capable of, right? You observe this Me Too movement. Okay.
Oh hell yeah! Oh no, I'm a victim of everything you've said, except for the part of being married. My personality, in the same way that I can't last at one corporation for 30 years, I can't last in a corrupt marriage based on bullshit for 30 years either. So, but I'm a victim of almost everything else. I mean, literally, my youngest son was stolen from me by my youngest son's mother. She basically stole a kid from me. So yeah, I understand this very well.
Yeah. So like my father instilled in me at an early age that whenever you're within close proximity to a cop, that is one person that can change your life forever, if not destroy it, right? And I mean, that was like indoctrinated in me or instilled in me at a very young age. Every time I get pulled over, my hands are visible on the steering wheel. Yes, officer, no, officer. Why are you shaking? Because I'm scared of cops, officer. You know what I mean? I'm starting to believe that it's the same thing with women in Western society.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
All
yeah.
it takes is an accusation. That's all it takes.
Yes,
And
yes,
you will have lawyers draining your bank account. You will have cops running up in your crib with their hands on their holsters. All it takes is a woman to summon. You know, they don't have muscle, right? So they use judges and cops to be
yes,
their
yeah,
enforcer. If they don't
yeah,
like you, if you fall out, if you put a woman in her place, if you do
yeah,
anything she does not appreciate, all she needs to do is snap her fingers, say you touched her, or say that you anything, and you have to prove that you did it. Right? That's how backwards society
yeah,
is. And
yeah.
what
The only, yeah, yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah. It's an
they have the
ideology.
it's like a cop. They have a capability of taking your life. They have a capability of making you a paraplegic. I would argue in Western society, the way that society is structured, women have the same capabilities. If you touch a nerve, regardless of how nice, how kind, what type of family that she comes from, it doesn't matter. Society is structured that if you make her upset, if she has a bad day, she can destroy your life. There's a lot of people that got dragged through the court system, and they start researching like, how did this happen? Why is everybody against me? Why is it that all it takes is an accusation and my bank account is drained? I lost my children. I have to report to a probation officer for something I didn't do. And then they discover MGTOW. And then they realize that they're not alone. They realize that regardless of how nice, how pleasant someone may be, you can't control another human being. And all it takes is for you to strike a nerve, and they have the power to destroy you. That's all I'm saying.
No, yeah, yeah, yeah. I totally agree with that. And all I'm adding, the only thing I'm adding to that is from a 1960s era black radical point of view, that ability for her to do that is based on her adherence to Western civilization in general, fascism in particular. And she would have to be demonstrably ideologically opposed instead of implicitly. That's the mistake that I made as a young man, thinking that all women, which was an insult to my African heritage, that all women are somehow nurturing, well-spoken communicators, and havens of love. Okay, that's an insult to my African heritage because African cultures built that instead of bridges, instead of nuclear reactors, instead of trains. African cultures built human beings. And part of that humanity, the core of that humanity was indigenous womanhood wisdom, which makes such women incapable of doing the things that you described. But there are so-called self-described black women right now who are more than willing to do that shit to you right now. Okay. And I didn't understand that when I was your age. So you have a better understanding than me
I do.
than what I had when I was your age. So yeah, I mean, my life wasn't destroyed because of it. My life right now, in this context that we're talking about, is very similar to what young Japanese men are going through when they become hermits in Japan. There's because of the changes in the role, the oppressive role of women in Japanese society, because of the changes around that. There's a lot of young men who are, I think the word is hentai. They are these
They're
hermits.
called like herbivores.
They you know they live in the city, but they never come out of their apartments. They just go to work, stay at home, go to work. They don't have a wife because I don't think there's something different going on in Japan, but I'm just saying because the roles of women have changed. Because when you think about it, the reason why the birth rate drops in a quote unquote developed country is because the women say, I'm not going to participate in this patriarchal game of having babies.
Yeah,
And
so
this is,
in Japan, they're referred to as herbivore men, and I can send you a link. It's a term used in Japan to describe men who have no interest in getting married or finding a girlfriend. The term herbivore men was also a term that is described as young men who lost their manliness. The term was coined by some author, some Japanese name, in an article published in 2006. Um, I think it kind of complements what you were saying.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so,
yeah.
and
I am not a proponent of what has happened to Japanese women under Japanese patriarchy. All I'm saying is the reaction of young men who have never done anything to women, most likely, is what you just talked about.
yeah, I was watching a documentary about China. You know, China, like back in the
Yeah,
day, they
yeah,
had
yeah, yeah.
uh, one child policy, and their belief system or their society, whatever you want to call it, was structured or founded on the male being the most productive or resourceful for families. And so families or couples would consistently, I mean, maybe I'm using the wrong term. It was common, or yeah, it was common for couples to consistently have abortions if they found out that they were expecting a girl. Um, and now, these children have reached their 30s and 40s, and you have hella men.
Yep.
It's like 10 guys to one girl, if not more. I've heard uh, stats as even as high as 20 men to one girl. And now you got little girls getting kidnapped and sold into the sex trade. Like they've become a commodity because of that type of gender policy.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
we
And then there's a brother named Loser Lao Y. His YouTube channel. He is called Loser Lao Y. He has one called Winner Lao Y. I think he discontinued the Loser channel, but he basically lives. He's from like Brooklyn or someplace in New York, and he lives in China now with a Chinese wife. And he talks about how other black men in that situation are trying to get their ass beat because these it's like you taking one of our women and we ain't got that many.
Oh, they would hate me. I'm trying to go. I'm trying to go to Bangkok. I'm trying to go to Thailand like soon.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah. Do not get a fight. Do not get in a fight in Thailand because 14 of them are coming after you. It's a group. It's going to be a group fight, man.
I have a
It's
whole
unless
bunch
you
of
got a
Thai
Uzi,
ads
unless you
coming
got a
after me.
Uzi.
I used to live in Asia, right?
No, no.
I used to live in the Philippines.
Oh, okay, okay.
Right.
Oh,
So
wow, yeah, yeah. So I might have to move there in my old age, man, because 401k, 401k.
I
Yeah,
have a
yeah,
number
yeah.
of
That's
reasons.
it. I mean, so it's really sad what happened with the Weinsteins and shit. Because if I had Weinstein's money, um, I keep saying this that I'd rather be a Japanese hermit, or this woman is going to prove herself that she consented because she's supposed to be so excited about me
We're in a
that she would
society.
tell everybody. She would leave ample evidence that she consented to be with me. There's no way I'd want to be with her if she doesn't want to do this publicly.
Look, this is how effed up society is, right? In America, probably in Canada, probably in the UK, probably in Australia. they can withdraw their consent after. They can withdraw it after they do it. How many times have you heard or seen videos of a girl that was like a college girl that was hella drunk, fondling all over a
No, no,
man's heels,
yeah,
and they show the hotel lobby or whatever, and she's willingly, kissing all over him, going in the elevator, going to the room, and then the next morning after it goes down, she changes her mind.
no. You're talking about a
It's
singular
happened
event. No,
more than one time.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You're talking about a singular. You're talking about a series of isolated events. I'm talking about a woman declaring a way of life.
I'm saying it happened to Kobe.
Yeah,
Kobe
yeah,
Bryant.
yeah.
They
But these are,
found like a whole bunch of different uh, variations of semen from different people in her vagina. So it's like stuff happens, man. Like
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
done.
yeah.
When I raise my boys, I'm like, yo, treat her like a cop. If you're not careful, and if you don't have like this recorded on video or whatever technology they have like 20 years from now, like you're at her discretion.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
I know
yeah,
it sounds like hate speech, but it's the truth. The system is biased. The system is effed up. And
oh,
as a man,
oh,
your life can be wrecked. Your bank account can be drained
there's,
if you are
there's,
not
there's one
careful.
name. There's one name I want to bring up that supports, mega supports everything you're saying. He's a comedian from a group called Kids in the Hall. It was a Canadian show. It was very popular in the 80s. His name is Dave Foley.
That's not familiar.
Dave Foley was married to this woman for 11 years, and she stopped having sex with him for 11 years. And because he wanted to be a good guy, he stayed with her for 11 years. And he lost, and they got a divorce. And under Canadian law, it's that French thing, the woman got way more power. So even after the Kids of the Hall went off the air, he had to maintain a lifestyle as if he was still working on television every day. So he has a net worth of negative $500,000. If you go to celebritynetworth.com and look up Dave Foley, he's probably the only celebrity who has a net worth of negative $500,000.
I can name probably a couple celebrities that are probably in negatives. There, there any retired basketball player, any retired professional athlete.
Yeah,
They went to school for psychology or communications as their major. They made like a couple million their first like 3 to 5 years, and they thought that they could live that lifestyle for 10 years, and now they're like back in the hood
yeah.
and
See,
got
I,
child.
I live. See, the thing that there are men of a generation older than me who lived through the time when the birth control device was invented. That was the only time in American culture where promiscuity was like it was promiscuity for women that had no other ulterior motive, not related to money, not related to prostitution, which is money again. They just wanted to have liberated sex because someone invented the birth control pill. That was a
Yeah,
brief moment in history that became legendary and distorted the view of women in my generation. And now it pretty much stopped in your generation. This MGTOW thing you're telling me about is pretty much saying this over. Okay, this distortion is over. It's all about if she's going to be promiscuous, it's very likely that she's doing it for classical financial terms.
and
You know,
hypergamy, right? So why did you get me
yeah,
on this topic?
yeah,
It's
but all I'm saying is that there was a time in history where there were these, mostly young Euro American women who wanted to have sex just to have sex, but it was because of the birth control pill. It wasn't for anything else. They might have said this is for free love, this is for hippie stuff, but no, it was mostly for the birth control pill. The birth control pill was like the iPod for the vagina. Okay, it was like this is new technology, and I'm using this shit.
Like it's still
And
there.
I'm sure those old guys can look at us and go, man, did we have fun in those days? Because that shit is over.
Is it?
Yes, because it's been replaced with a predatory commercialism. You have a woman now, and many of us think that we can go to Brazil to escape this or go to another country and escape this. No, this is a worldwide social media phenomenon where you have a woman who thinks that she has access to what Meghan Markle has access to. So you have
There's
to you're competing with her fantasy that may not live with her. It might last through her 20s, but it may drop off rapidly after that. And so you're left with this wreck of a person after that. So she went from most valuable thing on earth to wreck of a person, in a very short order,
Oh yeah, they like a milk carton. They have an expiration date, and so once they hit 30, they hit the wall. The wall is undefeated. It has never lost. Right?
Yeah, yeah. So in the same manner that we all know about young men who think they're invincible, but we rarely talk about the young women who also think that everybody on earth wants them. And if she walked into the room naked right now and I just look at her like my mother would look at her, she thinks I'm not even interested in women, not knowing that I've lived long enough and I've been with enough women to most likely look at her and go, I've been with that before. What are you doing here? I didn't invite you in here. How'd you get in here? Okay. Get out of my apartment. What are you doing
So
in here?
these are the terms and conditions if if a woman wants to marry me, right? We have to get married in the Islamic State, right? You can pick the state: Saudi Arabia, Syria, like Iran, like basically where y'all don't have rights. That's where we could get married at, because you're not going to you're not going to stick the government on me. So we get married in the Islamic State, and then those are the terms and conditions if you want to get
Yeah,
married.
and the third thing that I've learned that is the most frightening and most terrifying is that I don't want to genderize this because I'm sure there are guys who can do the same thing, but women can lie to themselves. So and by proxy, with them lying to themselves, they're lying to you. And
I'm
again, the
a very example of that. I mean, I would argue I lie to myself sometimes until I become what I want to be.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a lot of it has to do with the unconscious relationship they may have with their parents. Like you may think that you're marrying or you are becoming, well, no, no, not you. I may think I am involving myself with this black radical who is going to perpetuate the radical woman agenda that my mother had. Like, she was a school teacher in Los Angeles in the 1970s when black people were not allowed to be school teachers just a couple of years before, 5 or 6 years, they were not allowed. And so when she has black children, she's going to educate these children with a passion because black people were not allowed to do this. And here I am thinking that I got this young woman in my generation who wants to do the same thing. And you realize, no, she's just going through the motions, lying to herself about wanting to do these things because her mother is still alive. Okay. Once her mother dies, all that shit goes out the window and she starts to live this retroactive teenage life where she wants to have like boyfriend girlfriend relationships that should have existed in high school. She's doing this like as a 35, 40-year-old woman because she didn't get to do it when her mother was alive because she lied to herself about who she was as a person, who she was ideologically. She's actually an American, a white American teenage girl who happens to look like a black woman with an afro. Okay, she wants to go through, like when you catch her with a book by Dr. Harville Hendrix, for example. This is a self-help book, Getting the Love You Want. This is the type of book a white female would buy, and this is a self-described black radical who's buying this book. Okay, she's been lying to herself about how radical and black she's been. She's a white woman
So,
who happens to have chocolate skin.
so you don't. How do I frame this without getting you in trouble? You you have a difference of opinion with transgender.
Um, I have a reality of the difference between the musculature of a vagina and the musculature of an anal sphincter when it comes to transgender. So a transgender woman can only offer me her anal sphincter,
Oh,
which
I'm
is
not.
a
No, I'm not talking about
small
like.
band of muscle. It's a small band of muscle that grips only a small portion of the shaft of the penis and is nothing compared to the musculature of a
No, no, no,
vaginal
no.
wall.
I'm not talking about your sexual preferences. I'm talking about. I'm talking about civil rights, and if one chooses to identify as something that they're not, even if one could argue that they're borderline delusional, is this something that they should be entitled to, and that the government should enforce their that they be treated as so?
I wouldn't delineate government in government enforcement, and I have nothing planned to undermine or discourage anybody thinking anything.
All right.
Um,
So, okay, I'm listening.
but from an ultra conservative Afrocentric point of view, which is more conservative than any self-described white conservative point of view, the women in this Afrocentric world, the women have the right to choose who will be born. The women have the right to choose who will be born. And the day has not yet come where you have found someone who has studied anthropologically the remnants of indigenous African societies that bring forward transgender values that echo through the millennia transgender values. So these transgender people would simply not be born in this Afrocentric context. They're not going to be murdered. They're just not going to be born. So this is why in the Me Too era, Afrocentric thought is not respected. It is treated like in the same context as white conservative oppressive murder, which is completely unfair because African societies in those days had to populate the earth, which is not an easy thing to do, which is why a white Christian would write down in his Bible, be fruitful and multiply. Why would God, in that white Christian context, waste God time talking about be fruitful and multiply? It must be hard to do that shit, which means if you're an African woman who actually has the problem of populating the earth, you don't have time to worry about transgender issues. You also don't have time to murder transgender people or harass transgender people or make transgender people feel bad. You don't have time for that either. But they will not be born because of your supernatural, super black power of womanhood. These people will simply not be born in your world. Most of the people who are born in patriarchy are born because a man wanted this woman without regard to planning, lineage, metaphysical consciousness. He was on a horse, he saw her, he jumped off the horse and jumped on her. So you have a lot of ugly ass women or ugly ass people in this world because a man chose to get a woman pregnant without consenting the wisdom of other women. Most matriarchal societies, and I do not have the scientific evidence to prove this to you, but I encourage you to just dabble in this. I guarantee you that there is a correlation between a people looking good. Like there are lots of peoples in India, there's a lots of peoples in Ethiopia, all around Africa, all around South America, because women were designing people from the ground up through pregnancy. They designed people so that the entire population looks a certain way. There is no concept of this incredibly good-looking women and all these ugly ass women underneath her. That's a white European oppressive
Now, that's a
patriarchal
Cleveland
concept.
thing. In Miami, most people all look good. Like Cleveland, you'll see
Yeah,
one
but see
hot chick. Like,
what you have in Miami is you have good-looking people filtering themselves out of ugly ass societies and then congregating in Miami. That's totally different from letting women take over like they did in the old days. Humanity would not be possible without women in charge.
well, I mean, I would
Women
also.
in charge made humanity possible. I'm not talking about Margaret Thatcher in charge. That's not a woman. Okay, that's an Elizabethan female. Okay, I'm talking about indigenous, wisdom-based woman culture. All the good-looking people in the world came from them because they had the time and the freedom and the security and the safety to breed a population of beautiful people. That's why when you go to certain parts of the world to this day, everybody looks good. Like you go to certain parts of India, like damn, everybody looks good. Okay,
I would argue
but
that the more, and this is my personal opinion, but I would argue that there's a higher probability, symmetrically, whatever, that the more you're mixed with, the more desirable you are. So, like, I mean, you could feel free to correct me. Let's call a spade a spade.
mhm.
Like South America, Latin America, like it's not a pure race. If it were, then they would all be, I would assume, be like Native
Yeah,
American. They look like straight Indians from the 1800s. No, they're a culmination of African, Spaniards, and whatever else you could sprinkle in there, right?
yeah.
So,
Well. I would argue the only correction I would propose to what you're saying is first of all we have to understand the even European scientists of genetics will tell you that that diversity in terms of gene pool is highest in Africa. Now, from a white racist point of view, everybody in Africa looks the same. Okay, everybody's identical. But from a scientific point of view, genetic diversity is highest in Africa.
okay.
Now,
Well, hold on. Genetic diversity is highest in Africa.
yes,
Did we
even
not all?
though
Do, do scientists not all agree, for the most part, that we all came from Africa?
yes,
Okay.
yeah. So I'm just saying that. So when we use the word mixed in a modern Eurocentric context, we usually are talking about the recessive genes that most likely came from Neanderthals mixing with those African genes. That's what when we talk about mixing, that's what we usually are talking about. We're talking about recessive genotypical traits that most likely came from Neanderthals. Now there was a
When you
moment
say
in
African, you mean human, and Neanderthals mixed with humans of
yes,
African.
yes. Now
Okay.
there was a moment in 19th century, early 20th century European science where the European scientists vehemently denied being genetically related to Neanderthals. And when you look at it from a colonial point of view, you would understand why they would deny it for so many years that Neanderthals never mixed with humans. They had to do this during that colonial. They just refused to accept this fact, the scientific fact. So Neanderthal genes. The example I like to give is the actor who played the original Hellboy. You look at Ron Perlman, you understand that yes, Neanderthals mixed with human beings. Just take one look at that motherfucker, and you know that I myself, because I am descended, part of my bloodline comes from Germans. That's why my last name is Wilheit. I myself contain Neanderthal genes. Okay, so I can't, I'm not talking to you from like a a bizarre black Hitler point of view about racial purity. I am not a racial pure person. Okay, I myself contain Neanderthal genes, except I'm just being real about it. Okay, whereas Hitler would not. Hitler's probably part Jewish, but he probably would never tell you that shit. So, um, why does he have black hair? Okay, black hair is shooting out of Hitler's head. Where did that black hair come from? It didn't come from the Caucasus Mountains. Okay, so uh, that's the only thing I would bring up. Now, but the one thing I would add to what you're saying is that because of racial oppression, uh, the self-described light-skinned black woman has a better relationship with her own self-confidence than a dark-skinned black woman growing up in the United States. There's a lot of beautiful chocolate sisters out there who have ridiculously low levels of self-esteem. I mean, like I can't
I
even.
know. I live down here.
I cannot even imagine. I mean,
My girl
I
asked me,
first started to get the hint in my late 30s. That's how long it took me to figure this shit out. Because my mother was one of them chocolate sisters who she was oppressed by her own mother, but she didn't really spread that to me. Okay. But it took me a long time to figure out that there are a lot of chocolate sisters who think you are stupid for thinking they are beautiful. They think you are an idiot. Are you a dumbass? You know, you think I'm beautiful? What's wrong with you?
I'll always say, damn, they did a good job programming us, right?
Yeah,
And when I
yeah,
said they, I was referring to like um, white folks. Down here in Miami, but I would assume like in probably all major cities in the United States, it has become absolutely normal, right? Very mainstream for women to walk around with wigs on. Like
in
it's
Miami.
normal. Like, it's kind of like when I look at a dollar bill and I see Washington with his little powdered wig or whatever. And then I look at like the 1700 like photos or paintings, and you have these white guys with their powdered wigs. I'm like, stuffed up. Why would anybody
Yeah,
want to look like? How is that even cool? Like
yeah,
that's getting
yeah,
tip.
yeah, and the thing that I have learned is to go it to take it back to full circle. We talk about marriage and why you wouldn't want to get married. If a sister heard what you and I talked about, chocolate sister says, you are right. I have spent most of my adult life hating myself. You are so right, Bryan. I would no longer do this. Do you want to sit down and have a cup of coffee? No, I don't trust you. I don't trust you. Just because you changed your view in the last 5 minutes is nothing compared to the entire lifetime you have spent hating yourself. Okay? And I do not trust you nor my unborn children with you. And that's the mistake I made as a young man, trusting them with my children, that they would be a indigenous Mexican woman, which is my first wife, or they would be a wisdom-based African woman, which is my second two children, that they would remain devoted, not to me, but remain devoted to their indigenous African woman heritage. They did not do this. There is no evidence of them doing this whatsoever. They might go around calling themselves, I'm a proud black woman. They may say some shit like that, but they are not engaged. You can look at their children and see it. It's not there. They may have
Well,
well-behaved, well-educated Negro children, but they do not have wisdom-based African children. The wisdom is not there.
I'll
The
just say that.
idea, just something as simple as the concept of race. Race is a 19th century European concept based on flawed science. None of my children should ever mention the word race and take it seriously. Whenever they mention race, you put that shit in quotes. But I guarantee you, you go interview any of my descendants, they're going to be talking about race like it's this streamlined, brilliant concept and is a bunch of scientific, it's like it has no scientific basis. The concept of race is a white racist concept. It is of no scientific value. People who call themselves self-described white people who call themselves scientific and modern are still using this non-scientific word habitually because they do not have the holistic discipline to eliminate it from their vocabulary. And these are self-described technical white people.
So what would you call it then? What's the difference between ethnicity and race?
Race is a uh, race comes out of the response of a human to their environment, a multi-thousand year response to the environment that you're in.
Evolution.
I wouldn't call it evolution because there is no sense of direction. Let's just say change. Okay.
Okay.
Because evolution implies that the recessive genes of the white patriarchs who run the earth right now are advanced and part of a natural consequence. But if that was the case, we wouldn't have pollution. We wouldn't have the people who run this planet wouldn't pollute and fuck it up so much.
Oh, the people that they made money from pollute and F it up so
Yeah,
much.
yeah,
Those
yeah. So the only type of being who is able to live in this filth of this planet, because an indigenous person from the United States, what we now call the United States, an indigenous person, they most of them are used to terraforming this entire continent. So if a European were to walk into California during the time when Columbus was alive, California would look like a golf course. And that European would ignorantly assume that California naturally looks like a golf course. But no, indigenous people terraformed the entirety of California because when they think of their front yard, they don't think of a little strip of grass in front of a wooden piece of sticks, a wooden shack in
Mhm.
suburbs. When they think of their front yard, they think of the entire western half of the United States, okay,
Yeah,
of North America, okay?
shared.
That's a completely different mental view of the world compared to the European view, which is this small, tiny cave-like shit where I'm going to build a house made out of shit, right? I mean, literally, they made houses out of shit when there was no grass left on the prairie, right? They made houses, they call them sod houses, okay?
Okay.
And I'm going to live with this concept of property, which is what we're suffering from right now. The reason why we have all these different fucking phones, all these different video streaming services is because of this ancient ass European concept of property, of private property.
You don't think it
Okay.
would have eventually evolved just based on resources and struggles for them?
Yeah, I mean this entire world, like when I was trying to explain to my own children how radically different the world would be without Neanderthal-based white supremacy. Something as simple as when you're pushing a baby down the street in a baby stroller, and less than 6 feet away is a 2,000-pound thing coming down the street. A wisdom-based African woman would not architect an urban environment such that a 2,000-pound vehicle can be less than 6 feet away from a child. Only European warlike thinking can make that possibility normal. The idea that a fucking 2,000-pound thing can be less than 6 feet away. Just go through any American city. Those streets were designed for tanks.
Oh, I mean, I would argue, but I don't really see. Okay, so I mean, I live in upscale areas down here in Florida, but in Cleveland, like young black folks walk in the street when there's perfectly paved sidewalks. So, like,
Yes,
and
yes, you are talking about the. In fact, even the word black. These people are not black people. From the discipline of 1960s academics, 1970s academics, even 1980s academics, blackness was a political outlook. It has nothing to do with the color of one's skin. Now, blackness, according to white races, is related to the color of one's skin. The word Negro translates roughly into black object into English. So anybody who had a certain skin color was black in the white racist point of view. So most black people define themselves as black using white racism instead of using uh, black radical academic politics. They use white racism to define themselves as black because blackness ultimately means that you are in opposition to whiteness. So
mm,
Noam Chomsky is blacker than a lot of people who call themselves black. Okay.
so
Okay.
I guess you would get offended if I were to tell people that I grew up with if we're in a certain environment, I'm like, yo, man, stop acting your color. You would take offense to that?
No, you're reflecting the reality of this society. That's all.
Yeah.
I mean, it's overwhelming. You would have to live in order, especially for a woman, a young American woman, to resist the overwhelming pressure to yield to white racist thoughts. You'd have to be a genius of resistance. You'd have to have a Buddha-like consciousness in order to resist. The only reason why a person like myself exists is because I lived in that brief window of history where all of this was openly questioned. I was literally born in the year of the most radical time in the United States, 1968. Okay. So I'm just benefiting from that brief moment in history where everybody was trying to be black, actually black, not 21st century black, but everybody was actually trying to be black. Okay. So
Mm.
I'm a relic of that time.
What makes 1968 so special?
Oh, just keep studying American history. 1968 was
It's
the
3 years
most,
after.
yeah,
I was gonna
just
say it's 3 years after the Watts riots.
yeah, yeah. That was the time when everybody started dying. That was the time when we switched from Martin Luther King, "I Have a Dream" to "Oh, burn, baby, burn." Okay,
Huff Riot
so
was in 1966. So first was the Huff riots in Cleveland, and then 2 years later the Watts riots in California.
yeah.
One
So
of my
my
mentors.
education, for example, my education comes from radical black women demanding to have the same level of access to education for their children as white people, equal, straight up. Not please give me a charter school and I'll pay this kind of fee and shit and I'll take my kid. No, I want the same level. Give it to me now. These black women demanded it, and I'm a product of that. I'm designed by black women for black women. But if you were to ask the black women of my generation, after giving a description of me and what I do every day, they're like, no, I don't want that product. No, I'd rather not take that. Okay. But I am designed by black women for black women. Okay. And this was a weird science experiment of the 70s. But if you go and look at, the problem is there isn't a documentary on this. And me and my homework were just talking about this. We should do a documentary. about these black women who radicalized themselves in the context of child education. And they wanted black children to be college educated on the same level as white children and be black at the same time. So that's education without assimilation. It's education without assimilation. And I vastly underestimated this education without assimilation. Most people of color who get an education are also assimilated. I am one of the few people where that did not happen.
Mm.
It did not happen. Now, what happens to people like me is that we just die. We disappear and we die. That's what I'm learning. Okay. Okay. We disappear and we die. But I am effectively dying in slow motion for my political beliefs because they are not supported by the majority of the self-described black women of my generation and the ones after that. They just don't have, and those that do are lying. They don't have the resources, the wherewithal. They don't have it. So I'm fascinated to see what the hell is going to happen to me, but I think it'll be pretty sad. And the reason why I'm laughing is because I don't have your hormones. I have aged out of the same level of sex drive that you have at your age. I don't have it at my age now. I'm 50 years old. I don't have the same drive. Now, if I were 25 years old telling you what I'm telling you now, I'd be crying. I'd be apoplectic. I'd be like, oh my God, I am so glad I don't know what I know now as I knew then, because I would have no children and I'd be living this weird Japanese bizarre life, you know, uh, because, the only reason why I can talk to you this way is that you already have a clear hint as to what has happened. Because the way my father guessed it would go down based on his 1950s view of the state of womanhood was that all they would say is Brian makes more than six figures a year. The woman's going to shut up and do what he says and be married and end of story. My father did not plan for this new world where you have women who are like, no, I'm going to say what I want to say. I want to do what I want to do, and I'm not going to blindly follow what a man has to say, and which is great. I think that's wonderful. Except what they're following is self-destructive bullshit. It's making them overweight. It's making them die early. It's making them, put harsh chemicals on their skin and hair. It's making them
I,
wear.
that's something that I'm gonna ask about. It's like I had a conversation where my girl's like, my girl's like, so I already have designated names for my son and daughter, right? Um, and she was like, so are you gonna let Shaka get a perm? I'm like, no. Why not? I'm like, oh, what's a perm? I mean, I think a perm is when you want to condition or straighten your hair so that it can look like European hair. Why would I want her to have identity crisis like that? Now, when she gets to a age where she wants to do that, I mean, I'm going to try to do my part to explain to her what what may be influencing her to do that and some history behind it. But like, nah, man, Shaka's gonna be rocking some Afro puffs, and that's it. Like I'm not gonna. Her hair is not gonna be like mine and just be receding by the time she's like 20. I'm like, f that. I want her to like embrace who she is, and hence what I brought up like down here, and what I suspect in every major city in the states. Perfectly normal for these women to be bald headed because they effed up their hair trying to look like white women, and they're not going to say that, but it's essentially the way that they were programmed or conditioned, and it's like
Mhm.
it's it's sad and ignorant and a lot of things all at the same time. And
Mhm.
yeah, I just want my daughter. I want my kids to be just conscious.
Oh, you have a kid?
No, I had plenty of opportunities.
Oh, oh,
I
oh,
didn't think
oh.
we were
Oh.
qualified, so I kept on holding off.
Yeah,
So
yeah. See, to me, what I think is the best situation for you is like some half German, half black girl that you meet at a
Asian.
tech conference. She's educated enough to have grown up with white people physically to not be impressed by them, and she's traveled enough to see outside of the United States. And she meets you, you meet her, you have a great life together. Roll the credits.
And so this is what's going to disappoint you because it disappoints a lot of my friends. My family doesn't really care, but like my friends and everybody, like they get disappointed. You ready for this?
Okay, all right.
Not attracted to black women. Now, I am attracted to Caribbean, African, right? And of course, like Asian. I mean, most of my past girlfriends have been Asian.
Yeah.
Um, I just feel like, and they be like, "Well, why? Like, why? Why?
Yeah, well, yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah. See, the thing they're not asking is how can you love somebody that don't love themselves?
I, I always say I don't want to compete for headship. So I come from a very conservative family. Um, I don't think there's anything wrong, regardless of the era that we're living in this society. I don't think there's anything wrong with embracing enjoying being a man, embracing that I'm responsible for providing security for my family. I'm responsible when I hear some noise in the backyard, I pull out my Glock and I go check it out. Like I want to be a man, right? And I would hope that the person that I choose would be to be with respects my intelligence, my decision making, and no, she's not a slave or an idiot. She's my trusted advisor, but like I'm pretty conservative. I want to ultimately be held accountable for the state of my family, making decisions. And
Yeah,
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 we're
yeah.
going
But
to collaborate. I'm the one pulling.
yeah,
So
I would also argue that, and this is something that I can imagine the audience of black women, the imaginary audience out there of black women listening to what you're saying,
no one
and
listens to this channel.
they're starting to frame a false scenario. And this is the false scenario that I'm confidently saying has never happened to you. You have never been explicitly presented with, because you're not a rapper, you're not a multimillionaire. This probably has never happened to you, where someone, what they now call ADOS, American African descendant of slaves, ADOS. An ADOS sister has never said to you, "I like you, Scott. I like you. Can we go out?" And you never said to her, "No," because you're a black girl. You never. This has never happened.
Oh, not at all. Women,
Okay.
most
Now,
women that approach me are usually not
but
attractive.
yeah, I will tell you the second level is the probability that someone who was not of African descent walking up to you, that is female, walking up to you, born female, walking up to you, saying, "Scott, I like you. Can we go have some coffee? Can we sit down and talk?" Has this ever happened to you?
There's been times where I've been approached, made conversation, and we later, decided to hang out. Sure.
Yeah, yeah. But when you ethnographically plot out a chart of the women who have done that to you, I guarantee you that none of them has been American-born women of African descent.
The last one that approached me was Jamaican.
Okay, well, that's not American-born. And the
No,
reason
it's not.
why the reason why I specifically see, I'm not making a blanket statement about black women around the world. I'm talking about a specific cultural group of black women who will never in their, I mean, they could love you with all their heart. The reason why I say this to you is because when I was 18 years old, I'm leaving to go to college. And I went to a school in Watts. I went to a magnet program school in Watts. It's called King Drew Medical Magnet School. Okay. And I was this, I had a lot of black female colleagues at that school who I thought treated me like a little baby. We were the same age, but of course, girls, they mature faster than boys, according to legend. So I thought I was garbage to them, basically. And I'm about to leave, and these women, two or three of them come up to me crying about, I'm going to miss you, Bryan. Like, what the hell is this now? Why are you doing this now? What happened to the 3 years where you were treating me like garbage?
Mm.
I didn't understand about how fascism works, about how deeply ingrained fascism is in these societies where you got to treat somebody like shit in order to get them to like you. I know that brother who knows how to very entertainingly insult a woman, and then the woman is somehow charmed by that shit.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Okay,
Not me.
Okay. So when I was in high school, I wasn't that type of brother. Okay, so I was treated like garbage basically because of it. Okay, and so what was supposed to happen to a guy like myself is that I was supposed to go to college, find friendship with a all non-black population, and just vanish into that non-black population, never to be seen again. That was supposed to happen to me. That's really the plan. So when some 1970s, 1980s white educator or policymaker is sitting down thinking about making a program or acquiescing to these black radical women trying to make a program for a guy like me, that person is probably thinking, oh yeah, we'll just take the best and the brightest out of the ghetto and have them be absorbed into the white world and never to be seen again. There's a guy on Twitter right now in the 21st century who is a perfect candidate for what I'm talking about. His name is Sani Youssef. Okay, just go look at Sani Youssef's social media posts. Okay, if he ever comes up with a Nigerian wife, I'll be shocked.
Really?
His life is designed for him to vanish into a non-black world, never to be seen again. And I don't, now at my age now, having been through what I've been through with my children, I do not look down on those brothers because they can find more respect and they can find more semblance of friendship having disappeared into this non-black world than I have found. I have found more inhumanity, more brutality emotionally, more abstract violence dealing in my so-called all black situation. So I am by no means looking down on those brothers, but I'm just saying that was the plan laid out for a brother like me.
Howdy, Kai. I don't know.
Now, the one thing I've learned about Asian women, and I'm including South Asia, I'm including India in this Asian woman thing, is you got to give them a house, man. Their parents have lived. I'm not talking about American Asians. American Asians are mostly, white racists most of the time. But just like any functional black people, most functional black people from an economically functional family are white racists also. I'm talking about Asians. Okay, Asians expect you to marry them and bring their family into a house. This is why there's all this this brand new housing in China, for example. American people in finance look down on, they try to make jokes about all of these entire cities in China that are completely empty because it has brand new housing sitting empty. But they fail to understand the Chinese cultural value on new families start in new houses And you're not just getting her as a wife, you're getting her and her entire family. They all are going to live together under one roof.
Not mine.
So I'm just throwing it out there. Okay, just throwing it out there.
I I don't know. I do admire the. I think the family structure that they have. I think the family structure of almost all ethnicities. It just seems like it's so prevalent that African American families, at least on my personal perspective, tend to be more broken. Mine is.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's an American thing. Every American family is going to be broken in the same way. But we as a black people, we just do it better. We break up better than everybody else, you know. But everybody's on the same path. Just think about opioids, the opioid epidemic. They're on the same path.
Yeah, they would. The crack epidemic, they would be deemed as criminals. The heroin epidemic, when it hits Hicktown, Ohio, Hicktown, USA, it's these people are victims. And it's just amazing how people's perspectives change when it affects people that are close to them.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
what's even more amazing is you would think that if the war on drugs was really unbiased and anybody can get it and be punished, you would think that with the heroin epidemic, especially when you take into consideration 14% of the population versus maybe 65 or 70% of the population, hence Anglo-Saxon, you would think that the prison population demographic would would fluctuate based on this epidemic, right? If you really have a war on drugs and you were to treat heroin like you would treat crack, and you arrest the quote unquote users of it, but I don't think that's the case at all. Instead of going to a jail cell, I think these people just go into an ambulance and get treated and get help from some therapist. But I mean, thankfully, maybe all this is ignorance. I'm sure it is because I don't have anybody close to me that has been struck. It's just kind of nerve wracking how you just see the bias and you see how they treat a certain demographic of people when they demonstrate a dependency on something that is wreaking havoc in their culture and society. But then you see the first class citizens and they're experiencing the same pattern, and yet the consequences are different. Instead of prosecuting them, I feel like it's more of treating them right. It's just effed up, man.
yeah. Hitler refused when he invaded Russia. There's two things I just learned recently. One, when Hitler invaded Russia, 80% of the mechanized vehicles he used came from France. Okay.
Well, he
Two,
dominated France first, right? That's the whole point of
yeah,
conquering. Use their resources, right?
yeah, yeah. Two, when they started to lose, his generals kept saying, let's use millions of Ukrainians. The Ukrainians will join us. Let's use Ukrainians. Let's use Ukrainians." But because Hitler was a devout racist, he said no. So I bring that up to tell you that the devout racists that make policy in this country are willing to let millions of poor white people die and underclass white people die and non 1% white people die uh, in order to make their point. Okay. So there are families. So we as a society, we as audience members in the comedy club, we will never hear about a opioid addict as much as a crack addict. So even though there's probably not that many crack addicts now as it was in the 1980s, the word crack addict is still going to be used for decades to come. maybe hundreds of years to come. Okay, depending on how devoutly racist the society is going to stay. Um, but what's happening under the covers, under the radar, is that there are underclass white people who are suffering just like niggas from this opioid thing. Okay, but it would never be made famous out of racist shame, and that is why when you are an underclass, non-independently wealthy white racist, you are food. Only Trump makes money off racism. And this gets back again to the discipline around words. There's a discipline around the usage of the word black. There's also a discipline around the word racist. Very few white Americans can actually be racist. You got to have power. Okay, you got to have the power to affect the lives of millions through policy. That's what makes you a racist, not because you have a stupid ass opinion about somebody. You got to have the power to affect lives of millions. That's what
I,
a racist does.
I would argue that all you have to do is, for lack of a better term, exact or inflict your superiority complex onto someone that you believe is inferior based on your body language, based on how you talk to them. And the more that that occurs, where people feel uncomfortable, people feel inferior, because every time they attempt to develop a relationship or interact, they always are reminded, or that they're perceived that they're inferior. I think that wreaks havoc on a culture as well. I don't think you
Yeah,
have to
yeah, yeah. I
have
think
power. You just have to participate in, as a society, to condition someone to believe that they're inferior and they're not capable and they're not as intelligent.
yeah, yeah. A school teacher and a police officer can be a racist, yes, because they can do exactly what you just talked about, and to thousands of people. But a cashier working at Chipotle fucking with me because they think they're racist, that's not a racist. Okay. At all times, do I know that that person is a cashier at Chipotle, that I make more money than him and his whole family put together. So you can't do shit to me except murder me in cold blood. You know, so that's not a racist. That's a murderer with racist thoughts. That's not a racist. Uh, Now, to demonstrate that we have talked about all this painful ass shit, yet can be technical at the same time, before you get tired of this conversation, let me ask you some F sharp questions. May I share my screen?
Okay, I didn't know you were practicing functional programming.
That's a great segue. It's a great segue. Now let's switch over. Oh, um, okay, I'm looking at this interface. Get chat, screen share. Okay, here we go. Oh, screen two. Okay, let's go to screen two and share. Okay. Sky's looking at himself eat. Okay, now do you see that? Actually, let me move this over to the other screen. I'm gonna move this over to the other screen. I'm gonna turn off screen sharing and go over to my other screen so I can see your reaction. Okay, now this is TypeScript.
Okay.
Now, this type, this YouTube CSS variables type, you see how it's a string, but it's a string of specific strings. There's got to be an equivalent of this type declaration in F sharp or some other functional language? Because I'm
Mm,
not saying that YouTube CSS variables is a string. I am saying it is this string, or it's this string, or it's this string, or it's this string.
yeah.
So when I use I can use it in this for this value here. This value, if I try to enter an arbitrary string in here, I'm going to get a little squiggly. You see, it doesn't take any old string. It only takes a specific string, a specific set of strings. So is there an equivalent in functional programming?
Do you have
Or
F
is
sharp?
this-
You have F sharp loaded on your machine?
okay, hold on. I'm gonna start this up.
Link bad.
I'm gonna go to F sharp program. Okay.
So you can. I'm not quite sure what you're asking, but if you want to create a discriminated union, or maybe I should do it on my screen. Would that be better?
Okay. All right. All right.
All right. So let me see. Share, present to everyone, and then hopefully you see my screen. Uh, I'm now learning Clojure.
Hmm.
I think I graduated F sharp. Mm, create a new project. Mm,
Is that closure with a J?
yeah,
Okay. Yeah, that one. Okay.
that should be creating the solution. Okay, so I got a new laptop. It's 64 gigs of RAM. I like it. All right, so module temp. So what are you trying to do?
Um, can you make a type that is, I guess, is based on string, but it's not an enum of certain strings, yet it is an or combination of strings. So it's a subset of string. So it's
That
not. It's like
so
a. It's like it's a fine. It's like I don't know how you call. I don't know what the name of it. This is, but it's a string of specific strings. It's a type that is a string of specific strings, and it's not an enum. Even though it could be compared to an enum, it's not an enum.
the short answer is I don't think so. Um, so you can have. Oh, hold up. What am I doing? Yeah, something like that. You need to say, and I could put two bars on here. Okay. So you can do most of these taken over. You could do something like that.
Okay, so what does IntelliSense say for text choices?
So the thing is this isn't a or. This is what people kind of refer to. This is called a discriminated union, um, which people sometimes refer to as enumeration type on steroids. So you pick one of these types, but then you could attach data to it or a payload to it. So you can do something like let um, my choice. What am I doing? Let my choice. How spell choice? Is that how you spell choice? I don't know how to spell choice. Equals, and then you could say something like you want it to look like a string because I used to double tick marks like hello world. Hold up, let me get rid of that. And then you can pattern match on that where you can say you could say like something like match my choice with, and then you can have hello world. You have my name is something like that, and then you have who as well. Okay, and so then from there you can uh, this would have some type of string in here attached to it, and then you can say I don't remember how to do this. Is it print line or something like that? Um, and then they have kind of rusty on this stuff. And then that would be something like that. Or is it print function? Printf?
Um, when you do the let my choice, is it of type, is my choice of type text choices?
Yeah. So what's this complaining about right here? It says that this was expecting to have type string choices, but here it has type text choices. Buh, buh, buh. So, I mean, this is one way that you could format it, but
Yeah, what does the double backticks mean?
well, you said you wanted it to look like a string, so that's how you can have some. That's how you can insert spaces and special characters and all the other stuff. Is encasing your 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 value or your variable, whatever you want to call it, using the tildes or backticks, whatever you want to call it. Well, no, it's not tilde; it's your apostrophes. Um, if you wanted it to look like a string. So, for example, when you're writing an automated test, it's common to write your test method names using the backticks so that you can write out a sentence that displays as a test within your test explorer. That's what it's used commonly for. Um, so I think these backticks are throwing me off in regards to the compilation, but if I remove all that, then I do that, I still have a.
Oh, discriminated union cases must be uppercase.
So
Interesting.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't think discriminated union is what this is in TypeScript.
No, I don't think TypeScript has a discriminated union. I don't know if I need to assign this to something to satisfy the compiler errors. Hello world is of string, so this should have worked. I'm not sure why it doesn't. Well, this is a unit, so just do something like that.
All right, I gotta look up discriminated unions now because
Apparently, I do too, because I don't know what this compiler error is about. Um, and I mean, I wrote F sharp code yesterday. It says string to text. Oh, I know why. Duh. Because you need to attach a string to it. So my attached value. Okay. So to answer your question, and you don't even have to assign this to my choice. You could just do something like this. Get rid of that.
okay, all right.
And that,
This is okay. This thing I showed you in TypeScript is like a discriminated union, except it is all of one type.
it's, I mean, there's a difference between a discriminated union and enumeration or a enum. Discriminated union will is essentially a, a set of choices that you could pick from, right? And you can have data attached to those choices that you're parsing through. So you extract data from whatever choice that was made, aka pattern matching, and you do something with that data that was extracted. Whereas the enum, it's just a literal value. It's a set of literal values or constants that you can pick from, but they don't have any payload attached to it. I mean, is there like another example you want me to show you?
Let me write this down here. Let me see. Let uh,
I just want to do this.
okay. I'm at the let result level here. Let result, but I'm writing my version. Let result equal.
I mean, I could send you a snippet.
Okay, is hello world the value passed into the function, or is my attached value the value? Or okay, is hello world and my attached value, are they the same? Are they a pair that is being passed into function?
Yes.
Okay, so I think the red squiggly line is my attached value is not compatible with hello world.
The the red squiggly line is,
Oh,
I think it's just an indentation issue. Yeah. So if I were to do Alt Enter, Is this going to work? Um, do I have to end it with a? Okay, something happened down here. So I did that, and then that just should have printed out something. I don't work with the REPL that much. It'll be better if I use an automated test. I could try to assign this like let result equal, and then do that, and then I do result. So then I do result right here. Yeah, so I don't work with the REPL that much, so I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong. I usually just write automated tests, and I do things like that. But I mean, I could show you some like real source code if you like, and you could ask questions if that will help
Okay,
you.
hold on. Let me. Okay, function.
I think
Hold on.
I think a better example. I could send you all this, right? I think a better example would be like a type payment method. Okay, and then you have a Mastercard, which is going to be of a card. Then you have uh, a Visa, which is also going to be of type card. And then you have say that those are cards, right? But then you may have like Bitcoin, which is of some, I don't know, key. Okay. So someone can purchase something and then they need to specify a payment method. And of course, if we wanted to use this card, then we have to define that. So we say type card equals, and then we can say card of, and then in this case it'll just be a integer, probably an N30, N64 maybe, since it's long. And then you could say type key equals, and then you can say key, and that's going to be of string, because that could be alphanumeric. Okay. Uh oh, my
Okay.
alignment's off. And so then you could say let pay with equals. Maybe I should make that a cap W. And then you can uh, say Visa, and then you can have 90210567812 3 or something. I don't know. Okay. And that's, I think it's, let me reflect the, I forgot what I need to put for a big integer. Um, there's the M. Hold up for 1 second. How do
Are you talking
I?
about literal?
Yeah, F sharp, F sharp, int 64, literal. I thought it was L, but it's it's L. It's capital L. So it should be something like this. I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong. Is this still too long? It's oh, okay. I know what I did wrong. So then you could do something like hard. Okay. So this right here is just a substitute for doing parentheses. Okay. So I assigned a value pay with using a Visa that's of type card. If you drill into card is a single case discriminated union of a long or an N64 type. I know that might sound a little bit confusing, especially if I were listening to it and I didn't have any experience with functional programming paradigms. But
Yeah. Yeah.
so
So you're saying that you can define a type, like for maintainability, you can define all of your types such that they are prepared to be discriminated unions with multiple cases, or you can define your types just for a single case.
you can, yeah. So these up here, these single case union types, this is common when you want to like leverage the compiler. So, for example, we have a card and a key. We're not naming we're not doing a Mastercard is a int 64 and a Bitcoin is a string. We're not doing that. We're hardening or we're kind of like leveraging domain driven design techniques in which even a phone number isn't a long, it's a phone number. That's what the type should be. A first name isn't a string. A first name should be a type called first name. So this becomes advantageous when you are plugging these values of these particular types into methods or functions, because now you have to pass in a first name to a function that requires a first name versus accidentally passing in within double quotes 13D75FZ9 into a method that's meant to take a first name, but you just gave it something arbitrary. You kind of understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, Let me provide an example. Hold up. So Mastercard equals, and then you can do whatever you want with that. And this is how you would process uh, Visa, and this is Bitcoin, right? So these V's, this you could name this anything, right? I could call this Bitcoin value, and I could call this um, number. I call this up here number. All right, you can call it whatever you want. This is the data that's attached to that enum. Okay, and so even this up here is just a shortcut for doing this. And so then you could say match payment method with. It's the same thing, right? And so then you could say printf, in this case, um, you could have percent. I think they use a for some type of complex structure, and that will essentially print off the data type. And so then you could do just take this and put it over here, something like that. So like what I was saying is I could have a function called process that takes a payment method, and I could pattern match on the payment method. Or for shortcut, I could just say function, and it uses inference. It knows that based on inference that the parameter passed in must be a payment method because I'm pattern matching on the choice items for a payment method union type. Is that confusing? Sounds like
No,
it is.
it's a function of three different functions based on the discriminated union.
It so how do I do this? You are you said a function of three different functions. Well, yeah, but based on what's passed in. So I mean, it's essentially. I think what you should probably say is you're pattern matching. You're matching on what type what you're matching on the type of data that's passed in and processing it. That's all you're doing. So
Oh,
the type
oh,
of
the
data that's passed in is a
yeah,
Mastercard.
yeah,
Type of data that's passed in is a Visa.
your
And
your your variable process is a reserved word.
that makes sense. Okay, so say handle.
I don't know what process means, but
You know, they probably don't know what it means either, but they wanted to
yeah, I
reserve
mean,
it.
but I mean, if we were thinking in a functional style, then all of these print statements are like little functions.
Well, technically, well, they are functions, but they return a unit because they're rendering data to the screen. Um, so, like, if you look at the signature on here, you see that for generic parameters, if I'm looking at this right, it it shows that the output is a unit. So, if I were to do a
So what does pay with have to do with handle? Nothing.
so I could say something like maybe I should call this payment, okay? And so then I could say I could do something like um, let results equal handle payment. Okay, I did that, and I'm still
All right.
not sure why what I need to do for it to actually print off this stuff right here. But like this handle is the function, this payment is what I defined up here, and so you can have logic in here that I don't know reaches out to some API and sends that payment information over. You could also do something where you say like payment handle. You do the same thing. Now I'm not under. I don't know why I can't get this thing to work. Ah, there we go. So you see the card and then the card number.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do I have to put two of those in here? Yeah. So I mean, I have again. I don't usually use the REPL, so clear everything and then register all this stuff by hitting Alt Enter, and then that stuff gets registered. And so then I could just do that. It says that the card that I use from calling this handle is this card 90210 whatever, which it's not going to say. Hold up. Because it doesn't say MasterCard or Visa because I'm taking the number and I'm not taking the actual union, right? That's why you don't see Visa card 90210 blah blah blah. You only see card because I'm taking the card number from here, and that's the only thing I'm taking. I'm not taking this entire Visa thing. I'm I'm matching on if it's a MasterCard, a Visa, or a Bitcoin, and the data that I extract from it is what I actually process over here after I pattern match on it.
Okay.
So
Now, if I share my screen, I can show you what I have. Um, let's see here. Okay, I'm trying to figure out how to do this. And
things enough
let me see, does this work here?
to get rid of the red squigglies. I think you have to do printf.
Oh, okay. All right. Let me run this line of code at the bottom here. Okay, I'm trying to figure out how dump works in F sharp land.
That's new to me.
Dump is a function that allows me to output. I
Okay.
thought that was the syntax, but this is dump. Now it's saying that arg. What is this syntax?
It sounds like you dump whatever value that has data in it. So if you get rid of the IntelliSense, you want to dump the result.
Yeah, so like if I wanted to dump hello world to the output or hi, is it like I thought it was like this,
No,
like that.
no, you would just get rid of the pipe operator and you just have dump high. No, get rid of the greater than sign or whatever. And you would just do that.
All right, let's see. Oh, boom.
So
Okay.
so then you would do dump result.
Boom. I don't know why it's saying null at the end, but boom.
Yeah.
Okay, you have taught me discriminating unions.
Yeah. So you could
I have a total of 2 F sharp topics now.
okay.
My F sharp collection is growing.
Then you can learn domain driven design techniques. So like when you use instead of using like IEnumerable or an observable collection or a list, if you know that your collection has to have at least one item within the collection, at least, then you can create a structure called a non-empty list where the compiler forces you to have at least one element within that set or that collection. So I use that now all the time. Um, and then
Mm.
I'll if I'm doing a shopping cart, then any item that I add to my shopping cart, the output or the result type is a non-empty cart, right? But I can have a discriminated union type of either an empty cart or a non-empty cart if I want to add an item. And so I'm relying more on types to quote unquote make illegal states unrepresentable. So you can't you how do I say this? You in order to proceed with checkout, you can't proceed with checkout with an empty cart, right? That the proceed with checkout function requires a non-empty cart parameter. So I'm just
Mhm.
more stringent on the types that I use now.
Yeah, and speaking of types, this is my display item model. I have one of these in C sharp, and I have a new one now in TypeScript. And this display item model is what I've been looking for most of my career. You're like,
Okay.
what's the big deal? It's just a
This one.
stupid interface. What's the big deal? But when you're building data-driven interfaces, you need it would be convenient to do most of your building, not all of it, but most of your building off of a known type. And this known type, I am calling the display item model.
Okay.
And I can now design something that is completely independent of the types that it might be on the server, and then convert everything over. So I call that conversion process domain conversion, right? So a domain converter will convert the local type or the type coming off the server into the display item model type. And I think I have an example of this somewhere. I have a display item model utility. And you can see that, oh, I'm actually not even doing that here. I'm just using known type. I'm just using display item model. It might be in another one of my projects. Damn it. But okay, before I leave this, I just wanted to share with you, because it took me years to figure this shit out because nobody's doing this. Okay. And it makes sense why nobody's doing this, because this is too opinionated about what's going to happen on the client side. But I needed to. The other convenience of using this display item model type is that grouping becomes possible based on this model, so that there's a map property on a display. Oh, I gotta go back to. There's a map property. Oh, okay, there is a sortable is a type. No. Wait a minute. I gotta go back to display item model. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. The display item model is a subclass of another type called a menu display item model. There we go. Okay. The menu display item model is based off of a color display item model. I know these are all going all over the place. This is like a cloud of types, okay?
Mm.
But the color display item model is based off of the display item model. It's just colorable, okay? And what's important about this is that I can use these types I've defined in TypeScript, but I can use these same types translated to C# or some other language. In the case of C#, I can use these same types in WPF. But the menu display item model,
Hold up, you can't. I thought TypeScript. I don't know why they say transpile, but quote unquote transpiles to JavaScript. So how are
yeah.
you able to use that? And because I didn't think it was .NET. You're using
Oh, no,
.NET.
I'm not saying I can just rewrite this. In fact, I can show you.
Okay.
Let me just pull it up off disk here. I can show you. Let's see. Now I'm going through. Let's see. All right. Okay, in the Songhai core, I have okay, so that's the C# version of the same thing. Now I wrote this before my daughter was born. over 15 years ago.
Oh wow.
Okay. So in the 21st century, I'm writing it all over again in TypeScript.
Hmm.
But I'm improving it. I'm improving it. I'm going to take some of the learnings I've learned in TypeScript, bring it back to C sharp, because I have this concept of a selectable now, and the selectable has this little map, and the map is the dictionary of TypeScript.
What does the question mark mean?
It means that I'm not requiring you to uh, fill out the property. It's an optional property. In the world of C sharp, it would be called a nullable.
Okay.
And this is a generic type in TypeScript. It is a map of string or number, which is impossible to do in C sharp. And this is kind of like a discriminated union on a tricycle, as I've learned from you a few minutes ago. So I'm saying a map could be a string or a number and any other type. You're mapping with the key of a string or a number to any type. And any is what makes JavaScript, a dynamic language. The any type is any type.
Okay.
Is there an equivalent of any in F sharp? Like object?
Yeah. It's OBJ for object. If you're talking about system.object, it's OBJ.
Okay, so I think the equivalent in TypeScript would be a map of this discriminated union plus OBJ. Mapping to
Yeah.
OBJ.
It's essentially, which is the same thing as system.object.
Yeah. So this selectable allows me to store things in a map, and we can see in my little test here that I'm storing. I'm not even using the map. I know I'm using the map somewhere, man. Wait a minute. Wait. Okay, I'm using the map here. These maps, these G1 maps, G2 maps, G3 maps, these are the maps that are being associated with display items. And it allows me to select groups from this flat set of many display item models. It allows me to group them.
Okay.
And I will try to show you it's an action. I will go to my NG workspace. This is everything I've showed you is on GitHub, by the way.
You don't prefer Visual Studio? You use Visual Studio Code instead?
I use Visual Studio Code most of the time. When I move over to the server side, I'm going to probably use Visual Studio a little bit, but I'll probably end up in the very end of my pathetic life. I would probably end up totally in Visual Studio Code on Linux.
Mm.
Living in an apartment by myself with a stained T-shirt. It'd be like pasta sauce red on the shirt.
That's
I'm
essentially me.
be something like that. Okay, so I am going to start. Let's see if I can start. Yeah, I'm just going to start my little internal deal here. I have several projects. I got a client and these three projects. These three projects are on NPM. The core, the index, and the player. I'm going to have more players as I go along. So, my entrepreneurial attempt at the world is to make a player that will rival the Netflix player. But I'm starting off from the bottom of the bottom with YouTube and work my way along there until something happens. But I'm waiting for this thing to open up here. It's doing something. Maybe the CPU can't handle compiling this TypeScript and talking at the same time. Uh, but okay, here we go. Here we go. Um, it's doing this thing very slowly.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have to get going soon.
Uh-oh, I have a problem here. Oh, wait a minute. I gotta build. I gotta build. Okay, let me this is what happens when you try to build live. See? Um, I'm going to build everything. Let me just build everything. Let's see if I can zoom in here. There you go. I can see it now. I've got to build all of the core here. But this stuff is let me pull this up real quick here. Okay, so this is my NG workspace. And so here's the animated GIF of grouping. Okay, first it's in a flat pageable view, and you can filter it. I mean, are these animations coming across decently? Okay, so now this is the group view. Right now it's being grouped by date. Then I can group it by topic. Okay. So that grouping is made possible through the mapping that I showed you earlier. So you can put any arbitrary data you want inside that map. So this is kind of even though you're using this display item model, you are you still have the ability to add arbitrary data in this map.
That's cool. So you're gonna port it to F sharp?
It will happen naturally. I'm confident it'll happen naturally. And also, there's a new language called BOSC, which I think is F sharp. When you take Microsoft.
Yeah, I saw it. I don't really understand the difference. It seems like a functional programming language that's not F sharp, but it is still .NET.
Yeah, it's like I think they took all the learnings from TypeScript and said, let's make this a language all by itself so we can use it with ASP.NET. ASP.NET, the latest crap in ASP.NET is effectively, okay, you know that,
Yo, I really have to get going soon now.
yeah, I can't remember the name of this thing, but there's a compiled version of TypeScript.
Okay.
I mean, no, sorry. A compiled. I can't think of it. Yeah, it is. It is you're basically running native.NET in the browser, and there's a Blazor. So they want to basically do Blazor in but have the convenience of C sharp, the features of TypeScript, and run it all in the browser. So they have to make a new language for that, I guess.
That sounds interesting. Yo, Brian, I gotta go. But it's been real.
Go.
You hear me okay?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Man,
Mm-hmm.
this is the longest recording ever. It's like almost a quarter after.
Yep.
So,
Cool.
all right, I gotta return some phone calls. But thanks again, and
All right.
we'll catch up.
Thank you, man. Thank you for keeping it going.
Yeah. I think we scattered everywhere. I'm gonna have to. I don't even know what tags to put. I I usually only put functional programming, but we talked about MGTOW. We talked about
Yeah,
talked about
I think it's a demonstration of mental discipline. And ideally, the young people out there looking at this 300 years from now in an apocalyptic world will understand that we understood how fucked up the world was, but could be disciplined technically at the same motherfucking time. That's all, you know?
there you go. On that note, peace. I'm
All
out.
right, man.
I
All
gotta
right,
go.
man. All right.
I broadcast.